A money view perspective. It is no accident that the Fed has been at the center of policy response. Indeed, a fundamental premise of this book is that a money view provides the intellectual lens necessary to see clearly the central features of this multi-dimensional crisis. The reason is simple. It is in the daily operation of the money market that the coherence of the credit system, that vast web of promises to pay, is tested and resolved as cash flows meet cash commitment. The web of interlocking debt commitments, each one a more or less rash promise about an uncertain future, is like a bridge that we collectively spin out into the unknown futures towards shores not yet visible. As a banker's bank, the Fed watches over the construction of that bridge at the point where it is most vulnerable, right at the leading edge between present and future. Here, failure to make a promise payment can undermine any number of other promise payments, causing the entire web to unravel. The Fed does not just watch, it also intervenes. As a banker's bank, the central bank has a balance sheet that gives it the means to manage the current balance between cash flow and cash commitment. Lender of last resort is one example, in which the central bank temporarily offers up its own cash to meet commitment that would not otherwise be fulfilled. Bank rate policy extends this kind of intervention from crisis to normal times in an attempt to ward off crisis before it happens. By intervening in the money market, the Fed seeks to offer a bit more elasticity or to impose a bit more discipline, easing or tightening as conditions warrant. A century ago, at the time of the founding of the Fed in 1913, this money view way of thinking was quite common. But today, economic discussion is instead dominated by two rather different views. On the one hand, we have the view of economics, which resolutely looks through the veil of money to see how the prospect for the present generation depends on investments in real capital goods that were made by generations past. On the other hand, we have the view of finance, which focuses on the present valuation of capital assets, seeing them as dependent entirely on imagined future cash flow projected back into the present. The economics view and the finance view meet in the present, where cash flow emerging from past real investment meet cash commitment entered into in anticipation of an imagined future. This present is the natural sphere of the money view, but both economics and finance abstract from money. For both of them, money is just the plumbing behind the walls, taken for granted. Both largely ignore the sophisticated mechanism that operates channel cash flow wherever they are emerging to meet cash commitments wherever they are most pressing. As a consequence, neither the economics view nor the finance view has been particularly well suited for understanding the crisis we have just been through, a crisis during which the crucial monetary plumbing broke down, almost bringing the rest of the system down with it. The economic and finance view have taken turns dominating post-war economic discussion. First, in the immediate post-World War II decades, the economics view held sway, understandably so in the aftermath of Depression and World War. Private and public sector alike built their presence on the foundation of the past, the only solid ground that remained after the dust of war had cleared. Then, in more recent decades, the finance view has held sway, excessively so, as the present crisis now confirms. Private and public sector alike dream fantastical dreams about the future, and financial market provided resources that gave those dreams a chance to become reality. As a consequence of this long dominance of the economics and then finance view, modern policymakers have lost sight of the Fed historical mission to manage the balance between discipline and elasticity in the interbank payment system. In Beggar's Day, the Bank of England understood bank rate as the cost of pushing the day of reckoning off into the future. Manipulation of that cost by the bank was supposed to provide incentive for more or less rapid repayment of outstanding credit, and more or less rapid expansion of new credit. No longer. Today, policymakers understand the Fed's job to be taking completely off the table any concern about the mere timing of cash flows. The money view has been obscured by other perspectives. Abstracting from money, both the economics and finance views have in effect treated liquidity as a free good, and even more, over up their theories of such an ideal world as the norm for monetary policy. According to that ideal, liquidity should not be scarce at all. Users of the monetary system should be making decisions based on their intertemporal budget constraint, not their immediate cash constraint. Ideally, money should be just a veil obscuring the real productive economic process underneath. And the job of the Fed is to get as close to that ideal as possible. The rate of interest should reflect the price of time, not the price of liquidity.